long do you expect?
For this to take? You said that I could have an hour, right? Then I'll take that one. Alright, let's wait 5 seconds so we can. So, hi.
Hi, how are you?
Mrs. Kruvant.
How are you? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Before we start asking questions, would you like to tell us anything about your company?
Well, Creative Associates International is a company that does international development work around the world. And we work particularly in areas of conflict, or we work in areas of education, and we help people to improve their lives.
So, you've had to deal with issues like malnutrition and things like that before, right?
Yes.
So, we're going to be asking some questions that relate to that about exotic food, which is what our documentary is going to be on. We're going to talk about your experiences a little bit. So, to start off, are there any major issues in the world right now or that you've ever had to deal with because of cultural preference in terms of food?
Oh, yes. First of all, there's so many places around the world that the families live with less than $1.50 of income per day. So just think about it. If you and your family of 4 or 6 have only $1.50 to spend, what will you eat? So most people have to organize themselves very, very carefully. First of all, to look around the natural resources that they have. In many places they have mangoes and avocados and special fruits. So they tend to be
the general that I have.
So they tend to work on, you're going to be able to edit
Yes.
this? Okay. So they tend to, many of them eat either fruits or grains from around the environment in which they live. And most of them don't have the benefit of protein through meat. And so they have to balance it out. And because of traditional lives and livelihoods, they can balance mixing, like let's say, they get protein by mixing beans and rice. So that would be a core way of nutrients for themselves. A lot of those families do not have, like we have here, cheeses and milk, so they have to organize by drinking something similar like drinking coconut milk. Is this useful?
But have you ever had to deal with anything that involved people that weren't accustomed to a certain type of food and they had issues getting accustomed to eating another type of food?
Oh,
like sickness or anything?
Just in many of the places where we work, the healthy habits that tend to occur for healthy food is sometimes not there because they don't have special separation of the latrines and the special separation of the water that they drink or eat. And so the mixing of just the infected water and the good water would produce a lot of sickness. So lots of people, including the babies and the children, have some bacterium and problems in their blood. So we quite frequently help them with first of all, to organize their environment so that they can have a separated part where the dirty water goes and the clean water from the river, from the lakes. They can distill it and keep it clean.
Okay.
We take for granted here the water is grabbed from the water faucet. No.
Well, since you've had experience with a lot of people around the world, many different countries. We thought we'd ask about the people too and your experiences. So, this is about exotic food. Do you think that different ideas on health might contribute to the idea of a food being exotic to a person?
Well, I think it's exotic is what we don't have. Don't you think?
Yes.
Yeah. So sometimes what's so normal for us might be exotic for someone far away. So, like for example, they might think that a big burger with cheese and onions and tomatoes and lettuce and all of that is pretty exotic. However, here might be just a hamburger. So exotic is a cultural issue. But the nicest thing is, in many places, the communities, because they're self-sufficient, they don't cross borders with others, so that what might be in exotic, what might be normal in one community is pretty exotic, like 2 hours far away from there. There are also sometimes, I have seen in some places where the eggs from the chicken and then eggs from a duck or an eggs from a bird from a nearby community might be considered exotic. And for us, the chicken, the egg of the chicken, that's what it is. No.
So, more specifically, since we live in a Western culture, the United States, what do you think the idea of exotic means to people here?
I think the further away fruits or vegetables from faraway countries, like some of them look, I don't know if you've seen that they look like stars. Other ones they look like, they will be like waxy things. There's a food from Indonesia that is so, it's a fruit that's covered with pretty thick skin, but when you open it, it has a bean or a nut inside. But when you open it, it's so stinky. It's so extraordinarily stinky that for us, that would be beyond exotic. But for them, that's a cultural thing that is good luck.
So, do you think that color, shape, and even smell influence what we think is abnormal?
Whatever we don't know is what's exotic.
Alright. Yeah. Okay, so, do you believe that people, even though they don't all have an exactly common idea of what is exotic, do you believe that they have a common idea of what is bland?
I think the culture, historically, when people didn't have refrigeration, like now we have refrigerators and we have ice normally, even if it's hot. In hot weather, like if you're in the summertime here in Washington, we just open the refrigerator and we don't have problems with food, so we can make it bland. But in many, many countries, particularly in the hot countries in the tropical areas, when there wasn't any refrigeration, so to keep the food that's been spoiled immediately, they put all kinds of spices, and that's what made it hot, spicy, in that land. But it had a purpose. It had a purpose of keeping it safe. That's why if you think about some of the countries in the Caribbean, like in Jamaica, there was nice hot things. But it's because way back when there wasn't any refrigerator, they needed to go to continents. And remember in history, when you think about Columbus, that discovered America, remember he came from Spain to Santo Domingo. That's what he came from. He was not coming here. That was an accident. He was going looking to the Indies. In India, what he was pursuing the spices. And the reason why he was pursuing the spices because at that point they were very, very expensive and very exotic. So he was looking for the queen, in Isabela, he was with three ships. He was going all far away to find the place of spices because the spices were exotic. And the reason why they were so valuable is because there wasn't any refrigeration. So those the exotic spices from the Indies were going to be brought to Spain because it was like an empire at that time. And so they were going to use that to create new types of exotic food, but also healthy food. Isn't it fascinating?
Yes. So that means also, since I know many third world countries definitely don't have refrigeration and electricity and things, so spicy food would be normal for them and for hotter places, but for colder places, that's what makes it kind of abnormal.
It tends to be a little bit less spicy because you can keep the refrigeration cold safe longer. On the other hand, think about if you're an Eskimo and you can't go out too frequently and you fish things only once in a while, then to preserve the fish, you might eat every day the same thing, so they put the spices to preserve. So even though it's cold temperature, it's to preserve something long term and to also change it the flavor. But that's one of the reasons why they use spices.
So depending on the weather, like in the West, if it tends to be a little bit colder, then they all share kind of a common idea of basic food. And then in the hotter places or in the poorer countries, then they tend to be a little more spicy. So those are the two common.
I would think so. And the nicest thing about it in the 21st century will be that because we have the ability to, thanks to video, to see each other and know about each other more frequently. So even in the Midwest where normally food would have been planned, they get exposed to new cultures, and so they try, and they might start using chilies and all those things, not because it was oriundo, it was part of their country or their area, but because it's an exotic thing, it's frequently associated. Excuse me. And it was also probably exotic enough because it was also expensive, so it was a demonstrate a way to demonstrate that they have wealth. Want me to get some water? We have a refrigerator there. Let's see if we can get one. I'll come back.
Thank you. So,
Okay?
okay, so you've been all over the world, you've actually had many
We have
countries.
candy over there.
That's okay. So, do you think that you have kind of lost the idea of anything being exotic to you?
Oh no, I still, it's beautiful. Different cultures, they might have the same food, but they display it differently. In some other cultures, they would use for celebration, like the Thanksgiving here, is combining food with history, and also is remembering one's past. So there's certain traditions that reflect the past, but also reflect the season. So I might be visiting a country at different times of the year, and so that the food will be different because of the seasons, but also in many of the countries where there's less opportunities, there's a big tradition of food as a way of being welcoming people. So there will be varieties of traditional dishes, there are colorful dishes as a way of friendship. So it's never the same.
So people will always be different. You'll always discover new things about them. So with them, the food. that how it works?
Food is one of those connectors. We express our openness and welcoming of others by sharing food. Remember, if you're poor and you don't have a lot, sharing what you have is an expression of friendship. It's also an expression of respect for other people. The other part that I think happens is particularly during traditional families and religious families. In many communities, as part of their prayers, they might do some fasting during the day, and then in the evening, they will celebrate by having huge amounts of food, not only for themselves, but for their neighborhoods. So it's very beautiful.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mrs. Kruvant.
Thank you.
I
wanted for you to have both my card,
Okay.
but also something that might be useful to you that I'd like for you to read it more carefully. That when you live and you work around the world, it's really important to have some common ways in which you express values. And this is some of the values of creative. And then also some of the ways in which you figure what success is. And one of the ways to demonstrate success is that we do it with love. So I really love having the opportunity to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is it useful?
Yes.